Hi, Brian here for Giant Travels by Van. Today I'm going to talk about how I installed my solar panel and vent on the roof of my van. Welcome back to Giant Travels by Van. Today I'll show you how I built a custom rack to hold my solar panel on the roof and also installed the vent for my van. Let's get started. To make the cutout for my roof vent, I started off by using some plastic and masking tape to mask off the roof. Others have made the mistake where they let the metal shavings stay on the roof and they'll rust pretty quickly. So you need to be kind of meticulous here, and then I carefully brushed off the shavings after cutting out. The 14-inch opening just barely fits in a ProMaster City between the ribs, and so I found it made more sense to drill from the inside up for the 4 corner holes, since I could make sure they were centered. And then I went outside and used a jigsaw with a metal blade to cut the square opening. Here I've cleaned the surface and the holes are drilled, ready to install the putty. Looking at the putty in place here, you can see that I've layered additional strips so that I can make the curvature of the roof conform better to the flat surface of the RV vent. You need to build up those sides a little bit more so that you'll get a good seal. I then used a plastic putty knife to trim off the excess and get a good clean line around the vent. To install my solar panel, I needed to drill an extra hole, so I put some protection in there so that when the bit went through, it couldn't damage the panel. I'd purchased the largest panel that I thought I could feasibly fit on it. I didn't want to go with 2 individual 100-watt panels, and it looked like those would be problematic to fit on the roof. But I was able to find a 170-watt panel, and that simplified the wiring, not worrying about going into series or parallel wiring. The RAM ProMaster makes it easy to do your own roof rack. It has these holes ready for mounting brackets, and I made my own mounting bracket that you see here simply by buying some 1/4 inch thick 2-inch by 3-inch aluminum stock, and then cut it into the lengths for the 4 of them. So I think I bought 2 feet of this from a online metals retailer. I think that was their name. And then cut it and grind the corners, sand them, and you get a nice finish, and then drill the holes, and you're ready to put the putty down and seal these in place with longer screws than what may have come with your RAM ProMaster City. You may have to pick up some longer screws. Remember, most everything's going to be a metric. Here's a closer look at the putty. Again, you want to just make sure that it bridges and seals all the way around. In hindsight, I built my framing for the solar panel backwards. I thought if I built it from the inside out, that everything would fit well when I put it on, but I found that it would actually have been easier to build it from the outside in. So I had mounted these cross pieces to the solar panel, and then had some challenges getting them to mount to the long rails. Wound up drilling some extra holes to make that fit. But eventually I did get everything to line up. And one of the challenges is getting the screws to tighten down through the frame here. You have to use some good dexterity. I had my daughter's small hands involved here so she could reach in there and hold the bolts for me. Here's the fitting that I used to bring the wires into the van. You can see the holes are drilled in the van, and there's a couple of grommets there. I picked up a package of grommets at Home Depot to kind of minimize the wear and keep the sharp edge of the van roof from cutting through these cables. These were a couple of cables I picked up with the same type of waterproof connectors that the solar panel has, and you just insert them, run them inside, and then tighten these nuts down that provide a waterproof seal against moisture coming in. You need to make sure that these are faced towards the back of the van so that while you're driving, the pressure of the wind and everything isn't trying to force moisture inside of them. I drilled some holes in the aluminum rack pieces so that I could use zip ties to fasten the cabling so it couldn't flap in the wind. Here's a view of the completed rack, and showing that the vent and the rack mounts have been sealed with the self-leveling sealant. The rack, I don't think I mentioned, is built out of 1/4 inch thick aluminum for the brackets, and then 1/8 inch thick aluminum for the rest of it, and 2-inch for the long rails, and 1.5 inch for the cross pieces that the panel's mounted to, and then stainless steel hardware with lock washers and Loctite was used to seal it all and keep it from coming apart over time and vibration. One thing that I found is the long rails have to be mounted about as high as technically and structurally sound possible on those brackets due to the curvature of the roof, so that you'll have enough clearance out in the center for the solar panel over the roof. You can see the self-leveling sealant here on the fixture that brings the wires in. I also had the idea to use the same system from US Cargo that was the quick release and adjustable mechanism for my bed and seating platform, also to use these single point mounts and a couple of rings so that I could mount a tarp off to the side of the van and cover it, and yet quick release everything so nothing's showing outside the van when it's not in use. If you look on the long main rail of the roof rack here, you can see those mounting points near the back bracket and at the very forward part of that rail. And so this should be an easy way to fasten a tarp, use a couple of tent poles and stakes, guy wires to have a tarp off to the side of the vehicle, and that'll let you open the door, go in and out when it's light rain, and even perhaps cook outside next to the van. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something if you have to install a solar panel or vent on your fan. Stay tuned, I'll be covering the final builds of my video soon, and as you can see, I'm already on the road, so I'll start to get my trip documented. Thanks, and see you soon. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thanks again. Hey, Brian with Giant Travels Hi, Brian here from Giant Travels by Van. I don't even know my channel name. Hi, Brian here for Giant Travels by Van. Today, I'm going to talk about the cat in front of the camera.